Today is the day we're going to finish it. The Sunday deception. We need to understand what's going on in the world, what has happened, and why it's here. We need to be aware of these things. We're supposed to be watchmen for each other. He said, Son of man, speak to the children of thy people. If you see the sword come upon the land, blow the trumpet and warn people. Let them know what's going on. He that hears the sound of the warning and doesn't do anything about it, his end will be upon him. His blood will be on him. But he that listens to the warning and does something about it, he'll save himself. But if you as a watchman see it and don't tell people, don't warn them, he might go to his end, unfortunately, but his end will be upon your head too. I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Hear the word at my mouth and warn them from me. When we're given a word from the Father, we don't just keep it to ourselves. We shout it. We shout the word, whether it's blessings, like the Sabbath is a blessing. But there's warnings and things in the world that we need to be aware of that are of the adversary, and we need to get them away from us. Remove ourselves from them because we are a set-apart people. And if they infiltrate us in any way, we're mixing. We're being deceived. We're not sanctifying ourselves for the day that we have to be ready for him. And he's coming soon. And the Sunday deception was told in Jubilees. All the children of Israel, and that's us, by the way. There's some of us that haven't been here before. We've taught that we are the children of Israel, either natural born from Abraham or grafted in. We're all of the same olive tree. We will forget the Sabbaths, which has happened to us in the past. And on the heavenly tables, the division of days is ordained. The calendar is out there, lest they forget the feast of the covenant and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles, after the pagans, after their error and after their ignorance. And that's something we'll be warning about on this day. And understand that anything that is set apart, sanctified, blessed by the Father is a target to the adversary. He's got a bullseye on these things, especially his Son, his name, his word, his Sabbath, his feasts, his people, his creation that we're being blessed with today, and his land. We went over last time a guy named Nimrod in Genesis, and there's no historical record of a Nimrod anywhere, civilizations, but there's somebody called Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh is Nimrod from a historical perspective. And Nimrod is not his name in the way that you would think of it, but it's a type of who he is, and it's a prophecy for today, because Nimrod is, the root word is marad, which is rebel, and you put the noon in front of it, it means plural, singular, possessive. We will rebel. That's what Nimrod means in Hebrew. We will rebel before or in the face of Yah. Just like it says the first commandment is, thou shalt put no Elohim in my face, no strange gods before me. This is the statement that Nimrod, the mighty hunter, will rebel, him and his people, back then and now in the future, in the face of Yah with a paganism. And they started with these pagan gods in the past. You can see the names there. One of them is Ishtar, which we've all heard of, Dumuzi, Tammuz, which is in the scriptures, and Utu and Shamash. And we'll go through those just really briefly, just so you understand the picture. These pagan deities went across the ancient world from the Tower of Babel when Yah came down and dispersed the people, confounded the language. All of these pagan gods went into all the lands. The same gods, just now different names attached to them because they're different languages. And we're walking a tightrope here today. We need to know the facts, we need to know the truth, but we don't study it. We're supposed to study his word and his truth, but not the quote-unquote truth of the world, which is fables. Paul said it best, unto Timothy, my own son in the faith, tell these people where you're at in Ephesus and around in Macedonia, charge that they teach no other doctrine than the words that are faithful and true, the scriptures, the Torah, and the Nevi'im, the New Testament. Neither give heed to fables and endless genealogies, which minister questions rather than godly edifying, which is in faith. And what he's talking about when he's talking about fables and endless genealogies, he's talking about the pagan deities that were all around him, surrounding him. And if you ever even think about looking, it talks about this one begat this one, and this one did this, and it all mixes up from even in one country to the next, and inside a country over generations. And you could spend a lifetime becoming an expert in that. But that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to see the evil, understand it, understand the links between them and where they came from, and deal with it that way. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. Back then, there was a deity called Marduk, and the only thing I'm going to say is that he was called also Baal, which is an Akkadian word for Lord. And if you go through the scriptures, you can see where they were fighting Baalim, tear down the altars of Baal and the Baalim. And so you're seeing this link, and that's what I want to do, is show you these links from scripture to the paganism. And so now you know where Baal comes from. It comes all the way back to Mesopotamia, and all the way back to Nimrod and Gilgamesh. And oh, by the way, Marduk is identified with Jupiter. So I'm just showing you the links here. Marduk had a symbol animal, was a snake dragon. Just think about that. So now you know what Marduk was all about. He was also associated with the sun god. Utu and Shamash. Shamash was the sun god for Gilgamesh. He is represented as a solar disk, sometimes with wings. And if you look up there, right there is his solar disk. That's what Shamash, or the sun god, is represented as. That circle with the crosses inside of it. And the interesting thing here is Shamash is his name back in Gilgamesh's days. But in Hebrew, the word for sun is Shemesh. And if we have that vowel wrong, it's an ah, it should be Shamash. Shamash, Shamash. So you see the exact link that the Hebrews knew what sun was, and so the Mesopotamians knew what they were. And the original language is Hebrew, and so that just wasn't changed so much. Now there's something called the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is 12 tablets. Okay, this tells a story and the quote-unquote mythical exploits of this Gilgamesh, who is Nimrod, who was rebelling against the Father and the Son. And right there, the arrows are showing you he had two main things that the epic was talking about. One was that he visited the forefathers and learned about the great flood. And in many ways, we showed how that matched from a historical perspective, from scripture to what they're saying. The other thing, that he had adversaries in this epic, and one of them was the bull of heaven. The other was Huwawa. So the bull of heaven, he slayed the bull of heaven. And Ishtar got upset about it, and he offered it to Shamash, the sun god. And Gilgamesh, in these old artifacts, is shown a lot of times with the bull. Conquered the bull, conquered the bull. That was the main thing that Gilgamesh was known for back in the days. And Gilgamesh turned into one of these deities. Okay, so he becomes associated with the sun god deity. And he said that he killed the bull of heaven. So what does that mean? Well, let's go to Numbers and the red heifer. Speak to the children of Israel that they bring a red heifer without spot, and there is no blemish. Take her outside the camp and slay her. Take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet, cast it into the midst of the burning, gather up the ashes. It's kept for all the congregation of the children of Israel. It is a purification for sin. That was one of their main sacrifices for purification for the sins of the children of Israel. And Barnabas puts this in black and white for us. He says, where it is commanded to the people of Israel should offer the heifer, and after they have killed it, should burn the same. This heifer is a shadow picture of Messiah. So the red heifer that the sacrifice is shown in Numbers is a shadow picture, is a representation of our Messiah and what he came to do. And the adversary knew this. And so this epic of Gilgamesh, when they're rebelling against the Father and the Son, his main exploit was killing this bull from heaven. That's evil. That's an abomination. And so we're pointing these things out. And all this stuff, as I mentioned, scattered across the lands. Thus the same pagan deities. And these stories went all to the different cultures, all the way across. And here's another proof right here. In Syria, there is other tablets, and it says the same thing. It's different words, it's different language, but it talks about the bull and the slaying of the bull and his father Elohim, and Dagon, which is the fish god, and Ashtoreth is in there, which you should recognize from the scriptures, Asherah groves, Asherah poles, that the children of Israel always fought against to tear down. And I'm introducing the serpent. The serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. And he said to the woman, don't you know that you can probably eat anything? Because then your eyes will be open and you'll be as gods, knowing good from evil. Genesis. The serpent is seen by all the pagan religions as the great enlightener of the spiritual and giving knowledge of good and evil. And you can see this thrown throughout the pagan cultures, okay? I'm just going to say there's big serpents right there in the front of a temple. You can see the staircase. They put a lot of work into it. They were shown as divine or semi-divine deities, sometimes half human, sometimes full snake, sometimes full human. And you can just see the picture of the demons turning themselves into serpents and then coming out as half humans or full humans. And that's where these came from. So all these representations of serpents in the pagan religions go straight to the fallen angels and straight to the king of the serpents, who's known in Hinduism as Shisha. One of the primal beings that constantly sings the glories of their pagan god from all of his plural mouths. And in Ezekiel 28, Yah is speaking to that snake. He says, you were in Eden, the garden, my garden. Every precious stone was your covering. You were magnificent. The workmanship of your tabrets and of your pipes was prepared in you. You were the singer. You were the head of worship to me. And you turned against me. And so you just see that link right there between the pagan god, what they described as he constantly sang the glories, and who Satan is. We know who he is. We know who the serpent is. And this is a one slide on Egypt right here, maybe two. Egypt was full of snakes and sun discs. And you see the circles above all of these pagan idol heads. That's a representation of a sun disk. And you remember the sun disk I showed you in Shamash. That's the Egyptian representative of that circle with the crosses in it. The same thing goes across all the religions. It's just shown sometimes a little bit different. And if you look at those in detail, there's snakes in front of or below the sun disk. So they're combining snakes and sun disks. Egypt started declining back in the day when Alexander conquered them. Their form of the pagan gods declined, and the Greek gods overcame them in significance. But again, they understood each other. The Greeks and the Egyptians understood who they're talking. Oh, I understand him. He's just a different name. And that's why ISIS sort of creeping into Greece also, because they understood the different gods, just different names, same attributes. Athena, snakes all over in her clothes. Babylon, where all this started, Mesopotamia, Gilgamesh. Alexander conquered Babylon in 330 or so BC. He ended up staying in Babylon and started enjoying Babylon culture. He started assimilating what they knew. After Alexander died, he went into 4 empires, and that became the new capital. And they transported the people of Babylon to this new city in this new empire, but the gods started moving with them. And then the Parthians under Mithridates, notice that name there because I'm coming back to it. Mithridates conquered that part of the Seleucian Empire, and then that was assimilated, different names of the different gods, but still the same. Antiochus IV, okay, this is the story from Maccabees. And he was conquering Israel, and he wanted to get rid of the Sabbath and the laws and the feasts, because they weren't being homogenous with the rest of the people of his empire. They weren't obeying the pagan feast. They weren't obeying the pagan sacrifices. And he wanted one empire. He wanted to crush that rebellion. And so he came in and he told them, this is what you're going to do. We're building gymnasiums, which was evil in its own way. You're going to not do Sabbath. You're going to do it my way on my birthdays of the gods, which was a monthly affair. You're not keeping your ancient feasts. Your laws are going away. In the temple, we're calling it to Jupiter now. We're putting a statue of Jupiter up at the temple, and we're roasting a pig on the altar. And anybody that did otherwise were killed. This was about 175, 164 BC, where all this is happening in the Seleucian Empire and the Parthian Empire. You can see this merging. But Antiochus, before he was named that, was originally named Mithridates, which is the same as almost as that Persian guy. And so what does this mean? The seed of Satan was on the move. The original seed of Satan was with Gilgamesh. He was the one that rebelled after the flood. And it was Babylon was his empire seat. It went to Seleucia with the conquering, and then it started moving on west because that's where the center of power was going. and it ended up in Pergamos. This is the actual seat of Satan if you've never seen it. It was taken out of Pergamos back in the 1800s. It was moved to Germany and rebuilt in Berlin. And this is the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, and this is the seat of Satan that is described. The inscriptions on that temple were dedicated to Zeus and Athena, and we've seen them. And Zeus and Jupiter, who the temple is dedicated to, he's got snakes and sun associated with him also. The altar showed snakes with Zeus right there on the picture on the right. They said his eye was effectively the sun. And this is interesting right here that the statue of Zeus is in the Vatican Museum. Now, why would they have a statue of the sun god, pagan sun god, in their museum? More snakes, more pagan gods. This is Hygeia, which is a pagan god of pharmakia, and Asclepius, which is the pagan god of medicine. They both have snakes. One has a bowl with a snake, one has a rod and a snake. Hermes, which is in Greece. Mercury, his Roman name. Snakes and sun discs. That's not a straw hat, it's a sun disc. He's got a snake on his left hand and a pole. I added modesty shorts for him. Courtesy of L.L. Bean, if I remember right. So you just saw the three pagan gods with three different snakes, one with a bowl, two different rods with snakes, and here they are right in our face today. The one on the left was from Hermes Mercury, which is the symbol of commerce. Asclepius, the rod named after him, right there, symbol of medicine. And Hygeia, that symbol with the cup and the snake, which the statue we just saw, symbol of pharmakia. The snake is all through this land, all through our culture. Medicine, doctors, commerce, finance. There is nothing new under the sun. There's no remembrance of these former things. And this is why we're talking about it today. Neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall after be. Meaning, we don't know what happened in the past. How do we know what's coming? Because we don't know the past. We've got no clue of how it's going to infiltrate us. I will punish Bel in Babylon. My people go out of the midst of her and deliver every man his soul from the fierce anger of Yah. That's Jeremiah 51. That's an end-time prophecy chapter. There's a glorious couple of chapters there. Revelation says the same thing in chapter 18. He will punish Baal in Babylon. And we saw who Baal was. That was Marduk, if you remember a couple of slides past. The Lord. Baal in Hebrew. Get away from that. Get away from the commerce. Get away from the doctors. Get away from the medicine. Come out of her, my people, so that you don't partake of her sins and her plagues. Paul and Barnabas dealt with this all the time. They were in Lystra right there. Paul saw a man that couldn't walk from the day of his birth. He said, "Get up on your feet," and the man leapt and walked. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they said, "The pagan gods have come down to us in the likeness of men." And they called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercury. They instantly assumed that they were the pagan gods coming to life, still around us. And later on, when Paul's going to Rome, he gathered up some sticks by the fire, laid them on the fire. A viper came out of the heat, bit his hand. The barbarian saw this venomous snake and said, "Oh, this guy's a dead man." He escaped his punishment from the shipwreck, but he's guilty, and the gods are punishing him. That's what they're saying in this verse. They associate the snake with a god coming out and putting the punishment on Paul. But what did Paul do? He shook the beast off into the fire, felt no harm. The barbarians were watching him. It's like, he's not getting sick. He's not dying. And after a while, they saw no harm to him. They go, "Wow, he's more powerful than the god. He must be a god." This is what Paul was dealing with so often. But now you can see in Acts that they were associating that snake with a pagan deity. And you just saw all the pagan deities that had snakes all over them. And Paul says the mystery of iniquity is already at work. And we've touched this in a lot of places, and we'll keep coming back to the mystery of iniquity. And to the angel of the church of Pergamos, where the seat of Satan was, even where that seat is back in those days, you hold fast my name, and you have not denied my faith. That's where Satan dwells back then. And now that seat was moved to Berlin. And these are sets and buildings that were inspired directly from the seat of Satan, the Third Reich. they built their main auditorium open-air congregation for their Führer, as you can see, in the guise of the seat of Satan. They also built one back in 2008, where the Democratic National Convention was held in Colorado. And the president received his nomination there. And right before he received that nomination, he was in Berlin visiting the seat of Satan. Just something to keep an eye on. Now we're going on into other deities, right? Sol Invictus was a Syrian sun god, and this is where that path of the seat of Satan was, going through Syria into Pergamos from Babylon. As the Roman soldiers were going out in their empire, they started seeing this Sol Invictus deity, and they started pulling him in. And as the soldiers went up through the ranks and became generals, governors, and then emperors, they pulled who they liked with them up to the top. And on December 25th of year 274, the Roman Emperor Aurelian established the cult of Sol Invictus as an official Roman religion, joining Zeus and the rest of them. That's the foothold right there. Because in the old days, the calendars were different. Most of them didn't have weeks the way we know it as 7-day weeks. They didn't worship the way we worship every 7 days. They did it every 7 days in different points of the week, or every 8 days, or at different times in the month. But this one's different. Mithraism started filtering back. And you remember what Antiochus was named before he was Antiochus. He was Mithridates. And the Parthenon leader was also that name. Sol Invictus was born, quote unquote, on December 25th, a date that in the 3rd century AD was celebrated as the birthday of the unconquered sun, and that's documented. Okay, there's a lot of stuff about a lot of things happening on that date. This is documented. Mithra, who Antiochus was originally named after, came in from Persia. It was associated with the divinity of the sun and also knowledge. And so you see the sun and the snake right there in Mithra, knowledge and the sun. It was transformed into Mithras probably at Pergamon. The cult first appeared in Rome in the 1st century, gained influence at an extraordinary pace, spread through the Italian peninsula into Europe and into the whole of the Roman Empire, all the way to Britain. The most important element of the Mithridatic mysteries, that they called them, was Mithras' killing of a bull. And so we know all the way going back to Gilgamesh and the other story that they had, this is the same story and it's a different name. The sacrifice of the bull established a new cosmic order and was associated with fertility and all the other stuff. This is pictures of Mithra. It's almost always pictured in his stance of the killing of the bull. It was that important to him. That was rebellion. That was evil. And there's about 650 of these strewn from Syria to Italy to Germany to Britain. It was widespread. Mithras was born also on December 25th. There is recently discovered an 1,800-year-old temple in England that's dedicated to the god Mithras. It's built to align with the rising sun, his birthday on December 25th. That's recently discovered. Now I'm just showing you this picture again, the sign of the pagan sun god Shamash, all the way back from Gilgamesh. Just so you remember what it looks like. Constantine, he's supposedly the first Christian emperor. Well, that's history rewriting itself because he had a different agenda. He was a devotee of the sun god Sol Invictus Mithra, who we just saw. Before a battle, he had a quote-unquote dream that he saw a cross of light in the sky above the sun, and it was said, "In this sign, conquer." That sign right there is what he saw in the sky in his dream. The cross of the sun god. What was his plan? Power. He wanted power. He wanted to consolidate his empire. Because just like Antiochus was having trouble with the true believers of the word, so was this Roman. And so he wanted to bring them all together. And so they're all one happy family under his empire. Catholic, the word Catholic is Latin for universal. On March 7th, 321, he decreed the day of the sun as a day of rest. This is the emperor of the whole world saying, this is now the day that you're going to worship on. You're going to rest on it. This is where it changed. I've got the words there. I'm not going to read it. In the year 325, a bishop officially changed the title of the first day. He called it the Lord's Day. And we saw where Lord came from. That came from Baal. That came from Baal. They're changing the days over to the sun god worship day. In the past teaching I showed where the days of the week were associated with different planets and the sun and the moon, and Sunday was the day of the sun. And you're seeing all these pagan gods were associated with the sun and the snake, and they changed it to the day of the sun god. He was not a Christian. He was consolidating his empire and stamping out any of those who still wanted to worship freely. On the venerable day of the sun, let the people rest, the workshops be closed. So December 25th on the Julian calendar was the day of the winter solstice. That's the day that the sun started becoming longer in the day, and thus his rebirth had started on that day. That's why the birthday for the sun gods was December 25th, as he started becoming greater. The calendar changed in 1582, the Gregorian calendar, because the Julian calendar didn't keep partial days correctly and the days were shifting. The first recorded celebration of the sun god birthday as Christmas was in 336 AD. That's 60 plus years after Sol Invictus was established as a Roman religion, 15 years after Sunday was decreed as the first Roman day of rest, and 11 years after Sunday was renamed the Lord's Day. Do you see how this all fits together? This was a plan by Constantine and Eusebius and his bishops that were forming this Catholic Church and this new power center to change everything. We learn not the heathen ways. Burn their groves, which are the Asherim, the Asherahs, which goes back to Ishtar, with fire. Hew down the graven images of their pagan gods. Destroy them out of that place. Learn not the way of the heathen. The customs are vain. The pagans, one cuts a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. And they deck it with silver and gold, and they fasten it with nails and hammers, that it moves not. This is a modern Asherim, an Asherah pole, a grove that you can see in the Old Testament. The children of Israel were fighting against and ultimately destroyed the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom because they fell to worship of it in the Baalim. And the one on the left has a sun disk on top. That's what you call an abomination today. We have to call these things out. We have to warn people. Side topic, really fast, the menorah. Everybody knows what the menorah is. It's decreed in Exodus 25, make a candlestick with 7 lamps. Keep it lit at all points, day and night. And in Revelation, Yohanan to the 7 elders in Asia, from him who was and is and will be, and from the 7 Ruach, the 7 spirits who are at his throne. And he turned and heard the voice that was speaking with him. When he turned, he saw 7, what it says in King James is candlesticks, but it's menorot of gold. That's plural for menorah. He saw 7 menorahs up in heaven that Messiah was around. What do the menorahs represent? The 7 spirits of Yah that never go out, and that's why the menorah is always lit. And it's 7. So what happened at Hanukkah? Shamash, the sun god, invades the menorah because the adversary attacks everything that's sacred, sanctified. There's a 9-branch Hanukkah now that's widely accepted among Jews. A lot of Messianics accept it in Hanukkah and think it's okay. It's not. It follows a tradition that was set up by the rabbis and documented in the Talmud, which is evil. It started gaining traction very recently in times. Even more mysterious is the Shamash, the 9th light, bearing an Aramaic name that means servant. What's its purpose? Rabbinic sources offer contradictory answers. They can't tell you for sure, but we'll tell you. That's an abomination. That's what it is. They're calling the middle candle, the one that's above the others, Shamash, representing the sun god, the pagan sun god that's infiltrated the representation of 7 spirits of Yah. We're calling these things out. They changed the number of the branches. And this one's even better because it's got the Star of Remphan on it. And that's another reinforcement to the sun god right there. Right in our faces, and we never saw it. I threw out what I had before. I threw out a Christmas tree. Multiple Christmas trees I had in my attic. You've seen these 9-branch menorahs? Chunk it. That's how we're supposed to deal with these abominations. Rome doubled down on Sunday and Sabbath. In 363, which was 42 years after Constantine decreed the day of the sun as the day of rest, they doubled down. Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath. If you find them, cast them out. It confirms there were still people that were trying to keep the truth. There was still a remnant. He's promised a remnant. What was Constantine doing right here? All of those pagan gods we saw. Remember, Rome had the whole world. He had Persia, he had Egypt, he had Greece, he had Rome, he had pagan areas in the Celtic and Europe. He was taking all these pagan gods and just turning them into a meat grinder, into a single religion that everybody would worship. And he took the Torah and he put that into it, and he put our Messiah representation into that meat grinder with the pagan gods. And that's what they're all worshiping, and that's your basis of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church went to all the Protestant churches. Not everything was taken out in any Protestant religion. And so what do you have when the meat grinder of religions, all the pagan gods? You have a multi-headed beast. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Catholicism is Latin for universalism. Revelation 13:1. I saw this beast coming out of the sea. The root word of this is soul, whole, well kept. Soul also goes for the root word for Holocaust, hologram, and it's associated with Sol Invictus. So you have the root word of Catholic, universal, being connected with Sol Invictus, which is the invincible sun that was being worshipped by Constantine and the rest in Mithra. Isn't this funny how all these breadcrumbs are leading back to one adversary? And the Koizix sign above the beast, right? All those bumper stickers. This guy's wanted. There's many documented examples of where scholars and historians agree that Sunday is the Catholic Church's mark of authority. It shows that the church is above the Bible. Practically everything Protestants regard as essential or important, they've received from the Catholic Church. That's scary. Okay, that's why we've all come out of those churches, because we started seeing these things. Nowhere in the scriptures do we find that Messiah or the apostles ordered the Sabbath to be changed from Sabbath, Saturday, to Sunday. It's not there. We kept Sunday before because that's just sort of what we went along with doing. That's all we knew at the time. Here's the Vatican from above. A top-down picture of it. See anything interesting the way it's laid out? You've got your sun disk right there laid out. That's how it's built. That's why it was designed that way. They're still showing those symbols. And this is what Yah sees on a daily basis. This is the rebellion that they're putting into his face. And up there on the left picture, you can see the obelisk. That came from Egypt. The sun images of Baal. Take away the high places, break down the pillars, take down the Asherim, the poles, the Christmas trees. Commanded, seek Yah and do the law and the commandments. Break away these sun images. And Asa did these things, unlike many kings of Israel and Judah. He who listened, he obeyed, he cut these things down. And because of that, the land was quiet. And he had no war in those years because Yah had given him rest during his kingdom. There's a message here for us right now. We have to divest ourselves from all these pagan things that are trying to creep in. We're trying to be sanctified, and they still try to creep in. We have to keep them away so that he'll give us peace. Peace in our land, peace in our soul, peace in our families, sanctification, rest. There's the Vatican obelisk on the left. Came from Egypt. Caligula brought it over in 37. You see another obelisk in the middle that's built and designed based on the Egyptian obelisk. And that actually shows a union of male and female traits on it, which is another abomination, right there in the Capitol. And you have another high place and another obelisk on top of all the churches. What's the reason for those? Is there any real reason? Yeah, there's a real reason, because they're representing the sun god pillars. Most people don't realize it. The people that put it up, the pastors don't know. But that's what they're there for. Rebellion. More sun images. This is what your popes carry around. Well, not your popes, the Pope. They're not my Pope either. What do they have? They have sun images that they hold up above them because they're worshiping this pagan sun god. The Vatican snake building. Anybody seen this? The outside looks like a snake head. The inside looks like a serpent. That's what they do there. That's your Vatican. Okay, I'm only going to show this I'm going to scroll through this next one really fast because there's kids here. This is just so awful. Right down there, right there is where the Pope will sit and hold his meetings and whatever they do. And they put this horrible stuff behind him, okay? So I think I left it in here. I didn't mean to. So it's right there. If anybody wants to see it, I'll have it up on the website. But with the kids here, it's that's just too much. And I did mean to take that out. The second commandment, what is it? We know what the first one is. I am Yah. You shall have no other Elohim before me. You shall put no other pagan gods in my face. The second commandment is, you shall not make unto you any graven image or the likeness of anything on heaven or earth above, beneath, and you shall not bow yourself down to them. If you do, I'm a jealous El, and I will visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children of the first and the second and the third and the fourth generations of them that hate me. That's a strong word, isn't it? He shows mercy to those that love him and keep his commandments. We were just seeing some graven images. Here's one inside the Vatican being worshipped. A statue of Zeus, the sun god. You can see the sun disk above his head and a picture of people kissing his foot on the left, drawings from old times on the right, and you can look at his feet, and they used to be really good sculptures, and now there's so many people have kissed those feet that they've turned into just nothing. That's a lot of lips touching those feet to turn it from a statue into something that's just smooth. That's how much this has been happening. And it doesn't happen with just the people. It goes all the way to the top. But this you hate. You hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans. Nike, leader, conqueror of the laity, the common people, the ones at the top, which I also hate. Who's at the top? You're looking at him right there, and he's leading the pack. Right there on the bottom right, he's kissing that same statue of the sun god Zeus. Right there, you can see him with his fish hat. And he's picking all the other graven images that he has and kissing them as well. He's leading by example, leading all those people into perdition. Because the people that worship these graven images, Yah says, you don't love me. This is why we have to shout this out as watchmen. We have to understand the gravity of these things. Cut down those sun images. That was a curse of the breaking of the covenant in Leviticus. There's a prophecy that's an extended prophecy, a near-term prophecy in Ezekiel 6, and it goes on. Your altars will become desolate, your sun images will be broken. I'm going to do it, yet I will leave a remnant. So the first part of that happened. He did destroy the land and the people. He took them out of it, wiped them out, but he'll leave a remnant. And we're still here. And some shall escape the sword among the nations when you've been scattered through the countries. We are the remnant. We are the children of Israel. We're the few grapes left out of the cluster, out of the vineyard that are still here and still trying to love him and obey him. If we continue to do these things, we will escape the sword. These are his words. These are not suggestions. These are not fleeting thoughts. His words always are truth.
Amen.
An end-time prophecy, Isaiah 27. Therefore by this shall the iniquity of Yaakov, Jacob, the root of the children of Israel. That means all the tribes. That means all of us. You shall be forgiven. And this is all the fruit of taking away his sins. That the Asherim and the sun images shall rise no more. That's a prophecy for us right now. We are the remnant of Jacob, the whole house of Israel. And he says, I will forgive your past iniquity. Everything. Glory. Be watchmen about them. Tell people. Vatican sun god statues. I'm pointing this out because you can see, you remember the Shamash, the sun disk image, the circle with the crosses inside of them. Look what you see on top of all of these statues. Sun discs, crosses in the middle of them. Goes back to iniquity there. The bottom right is at University of California, San Diego. It's still around. It's still being put out. It hasn't stopped. More paganism symbols. All the pictures that they have. Have you ever seen the statues of Zeus and Messiah, quote unquote, that have the funny hand symbols, right? You always wonder about them. This is why. It's called a prana mudra. They say it's a sacred hand symbol. It's pagan. It's described as originating from the sun and connecting the elements of creation. And you see a couple of symbols that come from one of those pagan religions, a swastika and a sun disk in the hand. It's all linked together. It's all linked together. And that goes into Freemason and Illuminati too. Doesn't stop with the statues. The paintings are the same way. You have disc around everybody's head, the apostles, and of course, representation of Messiah has the special sun disk with the cross because he is the sun god, according to them. That's their representation of him, the sun god. The top left was a baptism thing. See the little girl in it. Look close. Yes, that is a snake in her hair with a sun disk. It's all there. This is from Leonardo da Vinci, Renaissance man. We're calling him out too. It hasn't stopped. This in 2008, I found a picture in Greece where they're still keeping snakes and pictures of sun images and sun gods together and doing their worship. All this stuff is still happening. And this is all of the places in our scriptures, Old Testament and New Testament, where any of the ones, the forefathers, the patriarchs, Messiah, the prophets, the disciples, the apostles, any of them changed the fourth commandment from Sabbath to the first day of the week.
Yeah.
It's not there. It's not there. We have inherited lies. The Gentiles shall come from the ends of the earth and say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanities, and things of which there is no profit. Don't inquire after their pagan gods. Don't wonder how their nation served them. Even so, I will do likewise, which is that tightrope we're walking on right now. I'm showing you the things in a summary detail and linking them together, but we're not following after them. We're not going to go learn about them. We just need to know what they are, why they're there, and warn people. Whatsoever thing I command you, observe and do it. Don't add to what I tell you to do. Don't diminish from it. And he that turns his ear away from hearing, which means Shema in Hebrew, which is hear and obey, he that turns his ear from hearing and obeying my word, my Torah, my commandments, my instructions, even his prayer shall be an abomination. He's worshiping idols. We're starting to see how really serious this is. Now everybody's heard of the mark of the beast. There's the mark of Yah too. This was never taught in Sunday churches. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations and glory what we're here today for a perpetual covenant. That means forever. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. What's a sign? It's a mark. That's his mark. And then he gave him 2 tablets of stone that he wrote, remember the Sabbath, keep it set apart. He wrote it with his finger. He was serious. And it shall be for a sign unto thee upon your head, and a memorial between your eyes, that his law may be in your mouth. Meditate on his words every day. Read his words every day. That's what he wants. That's the sign. Come honor me on this day. Don't do your ways. He spoke all this word, saying, keep it set apart. 6 days you labor, do all your work. Tomorrow's a work day. The seventh day is the Sabbath. Don't do any work. It's a blessed day. He blessed it. He sanctified it. This is his day, his feast day. When a woman came up and said, blessed are the wombs that conceived you, to Messiah, he said, oh, rather, blessed are they that hear the word of El and keep it. Not just goes into their ears, but you do it. We don't keep the law per the letter of the law, because the letter of the law kills. We keep it in the spirit of the law, like Messiah taught us, like he showed us by his examples, like Paul taught us. But we keep his word, we keep his laws the way that he wants us to. If you keep your foot away from doing your pleasure on my set apart day, it says my Sabbath, and you call it a delight, the set apart, honorable, and honor the Most High, not doing your own ways, your own things on this day, or finding your own pleasure, things to do, eating out, watching football games, blah, 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 then you shall delight yourself in Yah, meaning he will take pleasure in you then. He'll hear your prayer. He'll answer your prayer. He'll be ready to answer your prayer if you do these things. Going to worship on a Sunday instead of Sabbath and keeping your rest day on the Sunday instead of Sabbath is doing it your own way based on the false authority of a pagan religion. You're not following his words, you're not following his commandments or his covenant, and you are your own God. You are your own Elohim. And you've just put yourself in his face as another deity. I said unto the children in the wilderness, don't walk in the statutes of your father. Don't listen to him. Don't defile yourself with their idols. Do my thing. Sanctify my Sabbath, that you may know that I am Yah, your Elohim. But the children rebelled. They polluted the Sabbaths. And he said, I will pour out my fury upon them to accomplish my anger against them in the wilderness. What wilderness is he talking about? Because the shadow picture of the wilderness after the Exodus is what we're living right now. It's the same story. If you don't listen to me and don't do these commands, I will do these things to you. You will sow your seed in vain. You'll be smitten before your enemies, and then I'll destroy all your Baalim, all your sun images, and my soul will abhor you. And I will bring your sanctuaries unto desolation. Keep the Sabbath. Because everyone that defiles it, this is an Exodus, but remember there's a second death, and we're walking in the law spiritually. And the second death he's talking about is the spiritual death, the eternal death. My son, have you sinned? I have. I went to Sunday. Do so no more, but ask pardon, repent for your former sins. Flee from sin as from the face of a serpent. There's a serpent again. He's tying it all together for us. Because if you come too near for it, it will bite you, and it slays the souls of men. That's that second death. All iniquity is a two-edged sword. The wounds cannot be healed. So we must choose wisely. We all are going to receive a mark. We all have a choice. We can receive the mark of the Most High by honoring his Sabbath and his feast days and his commandments and law. And we're marked forever when we do that, as long as we continue to listen to him and endure to the end, and then we receive our salvation. But he warns us time and time again, all the children of Israel will forget the Sabbaths. They'll forget the feast of the covenant, walk according to the feast of the Gentiles after their error and after their ignorance, which has been happening a lot. A lot of Gentiles have been walking according to the feast of the pagans after their error and after their ignorance. These are the feasts of Yah, the spring feast and the fall feast, and the glory associated with them. Proclaim these in their seasons. Keep these feasts, and the Sabbath is his first feast in Leviticus 23. He says, Leviticus 23:2, these are my feasts. And then he says, keep my Sabbath. And here's the rest of my feasts. These are his feasts, his days. End time prophecy. In their heat, I will make their feast, meaning the Gentile pagan feasts, I will make them follow their pagan feasts, their Christmases, their Easters, their Valentine's days, their Lent, their St. Patrick's days, and I will make them drunk, that they may rejoice. They'll be happy in it. They'll be going along happy. And they'll sleep a perpetual sleep. That's a forever sleep, and not wake up. The Most High says, I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter. There's trouble there, because you're worshiping false idols, pagan deities that lead right back to the adversary. And he says, don't do it with the first and second commandments that he wrote with his finger. He desires mercy and knowledge of him. People have dealt treacherously against him. And this is our Messiah's prophecy specifically to those who are deceived by these things of the world, the Sunday worship, the pagan celebrations. These are sold out to him as far as they know, but they're walking in ignorance according to the feast of the Gentiles and on the wrong day of worship. Not everyone that says unto me, Adonai, Master. Somebody that is an agnostic doesn't refer to him as Master. They believe they're sold out to him. Not everyone that says unto me, Adonai, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father, which is in heaven. What's the will of the Father? Go read the Torah. Go read the first 5 books. That's the will of the Father. Many will say to me in that day, Master, have we not prophesied in your name? Haven't we spoken great words about you and evangelized and had lessons about you? And in your name cast out devils. So they had power, didn't they? These people had power to cast out devils. And that's what some people say sometimes. Well, I've seen miracles happen under the J name, and while I'm doing Sunday, and while I'm keeping Christmas. He's merciful up to a certain point. He considers those of you that are trying to seek him, that are doing those things, as little babies, little infants. They don't know any better. They're just saying, Dad. And at the time when your boy or your girl was that small and they just said something, Dad, and reached up to you, you hug them and it's like, good boy, I love you. 18 years later, if that teenage son is crawling on his hands and knees and going, Dad, it's that, boy, grow up or you're kicked out of the house. That's what he expects from us, isn't it? He expects us to learn. He knows we're being encompassed by lies and deceit. He expects us to seek him enough to figure out that they are lies and deceit. And that's why we're talking about these things today, so that everybody here knows, so that no one will be lost, so that we all might become righteous and stand before the Son of Man in that day, which is coming soon. Have we cast out devils, and in your name done many wonderful works, and almost nobody knows his name? And then I will profess unto them, with their jaws dropping to the floor and wailing and gnashing of teeth, I never knew you. Depart from me, you that work iniquity. In Greek, anomia, going back to no law, no Torah, because you did not do the will of my Father. And John clears it up. How do you know him? You know him, you know that you know him, if we keep his commandments. We are here as children of light. We're here to speak righteously. We're here to warn people. We're watchmen. This is part of our task, to understand these things that are all around us and not be deceived by ignorance. We've got to go out and call people to this righteousness, because it is that serious. It's a matter of eternal significance, eternal life. So you understand where Sunday really came from. Came straight from the adversary through snakes and the sun god. And all the statues that we see that people think is art, it's an abomination because of what they did with it and what they worship it, and the paintings and the history that they've twisted around and hidden the truth. All the way from the Garden of Eden with the first snake up there, all the way to today. That's your whole history. And we fight against these things. And we glory in that as we divest ourselves from these things of idolatry and unrighteousness. and we're washing our clothes. And he says, wash your clothes. Make yourselves white. Put on white clothes and be ready for me. Just like he said at Sinai, get your clothes ready. 3 days. I'm giving you 3 days warning. You be ready for me when I come. Be set apart. He's coming back. And he's giving us these warnings through the scripture and his prophecies. Now is the time, brothers and sisters, we have to get ready now. And only the righteous get to stand before the Son of Man. And only the righteous get pulled up in the day of trumpets when he comes back down and the angels bring us up to him. We have to work on it every day, brothers and sisters. But this is a blessing to us because he's told us the end from the beginning, and we know what we have to do. Just be diligent. Love him. Thank you, everybody. This is a blessing. Even these tough words, we glorify in all of these things because he's shown us all these things. Now go out and tell people.